Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show. I'm Lyn Hawkins. I'm the founder and National Director of Business Women Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we're recording our show today and the lands on which you may be listening from, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. You can listen to our podcast show on your favourite channel, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and of course you can find our podcast and webinar recordings on the Business Women Australia website. It's in our resources section. Today, I'm delighted to have a very talented commercial and litigation lawyer on the show today, a very gorgeous friend of mine who's a leading member of Business Women Australia. And we're going to hear about smart legal moves for growing businesses. If you think lawyers are only there when things go wrong, think again. The wonderful Shelley Davies, she's a partner at Vitalis Legal. In fact, she describes her role as legal practitioner director, and she's going to share with us a new way to do business for good. So before you next make a big decision or sign that contract, have a listen to what Shelley has to say. It could save you time, could save you money, and it will definitely save you major headaches. So, okay, let's bust the myths about working with lawyers and explore how legal support can be a game changer. I mean, Shelley, let's kick off with a little about you. So tell us what led you to become a commercial lawyer and what do you love about working with businesses in Western Australia?
Lyn, thanks so much for having me today. It's great to see you. I have worked as a dispute resolution lawyer and commercial lawyer for just over 10 years. I grew up around family business. My parents owned a business, and now I own a business with a beautiful business partner, Magare. So I have a special kind of empathy for providing really practical legal services, and I understand the importance of keeping businesses out of the dispute area.
Yeah, look, I can see you've had so much experience over that decade, you know, in this kind of area. And I think, you know, there's this common perception that lawyers are somewhat intimidating, expensive, hard to understand, and potentially only useful when something's gone wrong. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that still a view that's commonly held today in the business world?
I hope not, but I think it is. I think it is true sometimes.
Yeah.
I think at Vitalis, what we're looking to do is work with businesses more proactively. And the way that we're doing that and going about that is by developing particular services that sort of fit around giving businesses the opportunity to identify problems and get out in front of them. So one such service that we've developed and we're really excited about talking about today is our legal risk audit. And that's been born from watching businesses go through the legal process where, you know, it's got a place, but I feel like everybody loses really in that process. So the legal risk audit is a service offering designed to save clients money, big tick, improve business operations, and set up a long-term relationship with a lawyer so that they can call us, you know, when the early stages of an issue and get some advice, and we're aware of their business and we can give them that support ongoing.
So you're suggesting that, you know, every business owner who's listening to this show right now should really be thinking about engaging you before something goes wrong, to actually get you to come in and do what you've called a business risk audit. You know, looking at the business, looking at where the key risks might be for them, doing some checks over, I guess, their contracts and all those sorts of things. That sounds expensive. I mean, and how long does it take? Does it take a long time, and how do you prioritize? I mean, that's...
Yeah. So that's a common concern. So let's break down what it looks like. Initially, it consists of a meeting, and we love going to business premises and seeing where businesses are operating. We've got a genuine interest in other people's business. So we'll spend time there for an hour or two, and we'll do an initial, most business owners have got an idea about things that they're worried about, that they, that may be keeping them awake at night, and then we'll have some input to, and we can identify some things maybe they haven't thought of. So that's the first thing that we do. And then the second part of it is the development of a matrix, which is a traffic light report. So green for low risk and red for high risk. And then we'll list all of the things that we've identified. So we'll point out all the problems that we see, but it's not all bad news. It's then we put together a list of, it's usually documents, because we love documents. So it's usually a list of documents to mitigate risk. So we'll provide it all in a format that's really accessible. It's just a one-pager with the solutions as well. So though the beauty of that is that that initial part is a fixed fee, and then the strategies and the creation of documents that we have suggested, that can take place over the course of 6 months, a year, and it means that the most important risks can be addressed immediately, and it spreads out the cost for the business, and they get to decide, what's important for them and how they want to go about implementing the risk plan.
That sounds so innovative and very valuable for a business. I mean, what type of businesses do you think should really be looking at putting this in place?
Every business, Lyn, but mainly, so when it's particularly useful is at each stage, I guess, of the life cycle of a business. So the startup, if there's growth, each of those inflection points, and then if the business is being sold or winding down, it's a good time to do it as well. And the reason is that we've had a few go undertake this process just before a sale, and it means that we can make sure that assets are secured. If you've got a handshake deal situation and you're selling a business, you can't sell that asset if it's not documented. So it's things like that we'll pick up and address before a sale. Startups, they've got a lower budget, but there's we can tailor documents to be a bit more simple at the start, but just so that there's something in place for those. And succession, we look at that. We look across the board. So really any business that's contracting with a client.
I know when I was working in the tech space, I was amazed at how many. I was a general manager of a really fast-growing IT company, and the first thing I did was look at the contracts. I was amazed at how many of our employees didn't have valid employment contracts, and how many of our clients didn't have valid and up-to-date service agreements and contracts around the delivery of our services. I mean, I think a lot of businesses that start up and then get busy end up sort of focusing so much on the delivery of their product or their services that they can overlook these really big risks that can go wrong. And then when things go wrong, it can be very expensive. I mean, what are the examples that you've seen where things have gone wrong?
So true. It's like if you spread the cost out and address these things over a period of time in a measured way, you're very unlikely to have that huge cost, emotional, financial of having a dispute. So to give you an example, Lyn, probably a classic example of where a business didn't get their documents looked at was a client had a commercial lease, and they came through and they were like, oh, I can't believe our option hasn't been granted. You know, we've got to move out of our premises. It's just like, can't be right. I had a look at their lease, and the option was discretionary, which is quite unusual. Usually it's drafted a little bit differently to give the tenant more certainty. So I was like, I'm sorry, but this is, he the landlord can do this. So this was devastating for this particular business, because it had been the fit out and the premises was a really key aspect to the operation of the business. They had to go through all sorts of regulations, and they had, you know, a really specific fit out, and they were there for 5 years, and they had to move out. And what it meant also was like, just by sheer luck, in some respects, they already had a growth plan, and they were developing another premises. So they moved their business there. But and I reviewed the lease for that premises, but before they moved in. But what it meant was that they're instead of growing, they're still in just that one premises. The recovery was, it was huge. So yeah, those kind of, like, they looked at it and thought, oh, there's an option. We can see an option. It's a 5 + 5 or something like that. But just the use of a word or here and there can really make a difference, and that's what we pick up. Where I think business owners reading their documents is great, and I think, you know, they absolutely should, but they're not going to read it like we do. And that's why it's important to have the documents looked over, especially those key documents that really can make a huge difference to in this case, the growth of that business.
Well, that's the core of a business, right? And just to get a legal eye to review that document is so worth its weight in gold. So you're I love the way you've talked to me over the years about Vitalis being more of a strategic partnership with your clients. I mean, it's really quite a different way to position how you and the team do things, because being a strategic partner isn't necessarily how people would think of a lawyer.
So yeah, you're right. We're trying. You know, we do a lot of dispute resolution work, and we still, you know, love helping clients with issues. But that strategic partner piece is something that we're really working on, and we have got that relationship with some clients. And I'll give you an example of the way that has developed. With one client in particular, which originally came through quite a few years ago now with a battle of the forms issue. Now, can I be a little bit nerdy and read you out what I mean by that in a little? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Bring on the nerd. I'm a bit nerdy.
What that means. The reason I want to is because I feel like this particular issue it may exist in quite a few businesses without them realising. So a battle of the forms occurs when two organisations are negotiating the terms of an agreement, and each party wishes the contract on its own terms. A battle of the forms will take place if A offers to buy goods from B on A's standard terms and B accepts the offer on its terms. So I'll tell you what happened in our client's case around this. They sent a quote out. The quote was accepted by way of a purchase order, which attached the customer's terms. And this was a purchase order for hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of commercial goods. So it was a big deal. And then the customer proceeded to, at a later time, rely on its terms to just cancel the deal. So what this presents is, and we negotiated a settlement around in that particular case, but what it meant for the client was that they really needed to examine how they were transacting and what they needed to do to make sure that their terms which weren't very good at the time, but make sure their terms, and I don't know if it would have helped them, but to make sure their terms apply. So the first question is, how are you transacting? How are you making sure that your terms are governing your relationship with your customers? But also, what do your terms say? So it made them examine their whole sort of way of transacting. So we looked at that and tweaked their documentation, and then we looked at their terms, and then we had, by that stage, such a great relationship and understanding of the business that they have decided they've got a budget for legals now. Anytime anything comes up, just pick up the phone straight away. There's no need to wait, because we've got that relationship, and it just means for them that they're a lot more comfortable. They treat us like any other kind of advisor to their business. And this is, for a small to medium business, it's really important that you've got these advisors, like your accountant, maybe your marketing consultant, and your lawyer. We'd like to be included in that to provide that support, because we see the benefit of that, because we've seen over such a long time, disputes and how terrible that process can be.
It really does make sense to have a lawyer on the team, because they're going to see things that a business owner is not going to see, and pick these up before, as you say, by a client even adding their terms on an order and then fulfilling that order, they've by implication agreed to those terms because they've filled the order. So, it's like, yeah, it's got to be so careful. These are great examples. Would there be a value for even for-purpose and not-for-profit organisations having a legal risk audit as well as for-profit businesses? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have particular sectors that we're used to dealing with, and yeah, certainly not-for-profit. Again, small budgets want to try to minimise overall risk and keep costs down. It's really relevant for any type of business, Lyn.
Yeah, absolutely. And even some of those not-for-profits have got big budgets. I'm thinking of aged care industry, and oh my goodness, it's right for making sure their contracts are in place, such complex business environments. So, what are the common risks that you uncover that business owners don't realise? I mean, we've touched on things like terms and conditions, like leases and employment contracts. What other sorts of things do you uncover when you do these risk audits?
We uncover handshake deals very often, and don't get me wrong, I no judgment. That's great. If the relationship's that good, and that's a good way to start a relationship. There's just so many issues with those deals, particularly from a succession point of view. If that business owner that's made those deals wants to move on or passes away, then so much of that value is lost.
Well, also if they get sick, if either parties get sick, everyone's trying to work out what was the arrangement here. It's like, yeah, really tricky.
So the way the way that we work around those handshake deals is to respect them, and to not make it, you can't go from having a handshake deal to a telephone book of terms and conditions. So we try to work with and complement the relationship that exists with the way that we introduce the legal documents. Being sensitive around the fact that some business owners don't feel comfortable, slamming down their terms and conditions on the table, and they want to preserve their relationships. So that's a big one that comes up. And then, as you quite rightly pointed out, employment contracts and employment policies and procedures and that kind of thing is another big one. And then the succession piece. My business partner Magare is a brilliant succession lawyer, so she looks at what's in place for the business in terms of shareholders agreements and what's going to happen with the business in the future. So so they're probably the main ones. Anything contractual, terms and conditions, whether they're inadequate or need a little bit of work. Yeah, they're probably the big tickets, Lyn.
Well, they're really the core things to any business, really, aren't they? And so important not to sort of set and forget. Even if you have, established some of the things at the very beginning, your business is probably evolved, and those things have changed, and the original kind of relationships that were in place have probably moved on and changed. So really important and great advice, Shelley. So what are the key things that every business owner or manager should consider about when they're thinking around that legal protection and risk management? If you said, let's sort of boil it down to some key things for our listeners to take away with.
Yes. I'd love businesses to consider the benefits of getting out in front of legal issues. Lots of business owners say, "Oh, nothing's happened," and I get that, but when it does, it can be really, really devastating. So I think, I love to see business owners look at legal services as being preventative and to incorporate that sort of advisor into their ecosystem. And then with that, like with our strategic partner I mentioned, having a budget for legals is really, making it more accessible throughout the year if you're dealing with particular documents, and your own time in assisting to produce those documents. So putting aside a small amount of money each month for legals is a great a great alternative to having a huge legal bill after a dispute. And I guess the other part is I always encourage clients to look at the legal fees in context. So, and what I mean by that is in relation to, well, what would it mean for the business if this went wrong? And look at the cost of that. So to have some perspective around the value.
I think that's so important. And I just wish that Entrepreneurship 101 included, as you say, that legal kind of hotline, having someone on retainer that's there, in your corner, there's checking over things, using that time that they've, got available to you each month to be, getting ahead and chipping away at all those key risk areas. It just sounds so practical. Look, I've loved seeing you shine in your role. I know you stepped into that role as director in 2023, wasn't it, Shelley? And I've just loved seeing how you've drawn on this impressive background in general commercial law and litigation to be positioning and helping position this firm in such a unique and innovative way. Look, we can tell when you're sharing things, you're so deeply committed to understanding those unique needs of each of your clients. And I can see how much you care. You're very precise, even the way that, we've been planning this podcast. You're very precise. You want to make sure that you look after every little aspect of everything. And I think you take that into your professional world. So people are going to be in very good hands with you and the team there, because that's really looking at, the whole picture and the detail as well. So that beautiful personalisation, I think, is very special. So I think you really should be very proud of how you've grown into this incredible leadership role that you have. So for our listeners out there, if you're looking for that legal strategic partner, or if you just want, ad hoc check of your, contract, or if there's an issue that's bubbling away and you can see that this might be something where, it could be a potential dispute, nip it in the bud now. Get Shelley on board and get her to have a little review of what that's going on there, because, it could be from a sales transaction. You've got a wide range of industries that you're across, isn't there, Shelley? I mean, what are the sort of areas that you're finding that most of the work is coming to you from?
We I guess serve a lot of different sectors, Lyn. Agribusiness, healthcare, transport, mining services. engineering. They're sort of the big ones. But yeah, really, we're interested in business. So any kind of small to medium business, we're between Margera and I, we're pretty well set up to be a bit of a GP for that size business.
I love that. I love that analogy. That's really great. And Margera is equally talented and also so experienced in this space. And it's not just practical, but I can just feel that you have so much empathy for your clients. So it's great to actually be able to offer that balance between being able to, deal with issues as they arise, but also have something that's way more proactive. So for listeners who'd like to explore working with Vitalis Legal, what's the best way of getting started or reaching out to you?
Contact me, Lyn. If something really resonates and or you're worried about something, happy to have a discussion. I love learning about people's business, and I'd be more than happy to be contacted by email or simply just to call me.
Fantastic. Well, in our show notes, we have our directory listing for Shelley Davies on the Business Women Australia website. You can also find Shelley on the Vitalis Legal website and on LinkedIn. She's very active on LinkedIn too. She's there, very approachable. And as you can tell, this sounds like a really proactive way of getting your business shipshape and reducing any risk going forward. So thanks for coming on the show, Shelley. I hope we can get you back on the show again. There's so much stuff that's come out of there that I'd love to dig in and unpack. So thanks for coming on.
So much for having me, Lyn. It was great to speak to you this morning.
Yeah, great stuff.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.